Imagine looking into the eyes of the person you trust most in the world, and instead of warmth, you see a cold abyss of self-interest. Now imagine that the price of that trust isn't just gossip behind your back or a revealed secret, but your own total ruin. Human history is not just made of wars between colossal empires. It is shaped by the silent micro-wars waged inside locked rooms, where a tight embrace was the signal for the blade to plunge deeper. Human psychology hides monsters that wear flawless masks of affection. But to understand this, we need to go back to the year was 44 BC, in a bustling Rome, where the marble of the palaces echoed with whispers of power. Julius Caesar, the man who had bent the known world to its knees, was walking toward the Senate. He felt invincible, protected by the love of the people and, above all, by the loyalty of his closest allies. Among them was a man Caesar treated almost like a son, someone who frequented his home, shared his anxieties, and smiled at his triumphs. The viewer of history knows the ending, but what few seek to understand is the psychological torture of the preceding days. Caesar felt something shifting in the air, a subtle coldness in the corridors, but he chose to ignore the warning signs because the human brain prefers the comforting lie of a friend over the painful truth of a betrayal. Before we continue, I want to know one thing. Which city are you watching this video from? Write it in the comments. The atmosphere in the Senate on that fateful day was suffocating. The smell of incense, mixed with the sweat of hundreds of men, created a heavy, almost unbreathable air. The sound of leather sandals striking the stone floor echoed like a countdown to disaster. Caesar sat in his golden chair, feeling an inexplicable chill run down his spine. The faces around him were familiar, faces of men he had enriched, men who had sworn to protect him with their very lives. The isolation of being at the top is accompanied by a blinding, emotional darkness. Caesar looked at those figures and saw only support, unable to decipher the yellow smiles and the eyes that quickly darted away whenever he stared at them directly. But this is just the beginning. The first great hallmark of a fake connection is opportunistic validation. That morning, the conspirators surrounded Caesar, pretending to present a petition, flattering him with sweet words and inflated praise. Human beings have an intrinsic need to be accepted, and the false ally uses this vulnerability as a weapon of mass destruction. They inflate your ego so that you cannot see the ground vanishing beneath your feet. While a real friend offers the discomfort of truth, the traitor feeds you the sugary poison of constant adulation. And it was at that moment that everything changed. What happened next surprised even the historians who studied the case for centuries. One of the men pulled at Caesar's toga, the coordinated signal for the attack. Within seconds, the circle of protection transformed into a wall of sharp blades. Metal flashed beneath the light filtering through the crevices in the ceiling, and the sound of tearing fabric was drowned out by cries of panic. Caesar fought back, pushing his attackers away with desperate strength, refusing to fall before declared enemies. But there was an even greater problem. True pain does not come from the physical blow, but from the breaking of the bond of loyalty. As blood stained the white marble of the Senate, Caesar looked desperately for a glance of help among the crowd. That was when the smoke of confusion cleared and he saw the face of Marcus Junius Brutus. Few people know this detail, but Brutus was not just a political colleague. He was Caesar's most intimate confidant, someone who had free access to his private quarters and his most vulnerable thoughts. The silent traitor always positions themselves in the blind spot of your life, exactly where you would never think to place a shield. Have you ever heard of this before? Answer yes or no in the comments. Upon seeing Brutus with his dagger drawn, Caesar's resistance simply evaporated. The strength that sustained the world's greatest conqueror did not come from the body, it came from the soul, and that soul was shattered in two in a fraction of a second. It is here that the story takes an unexpected turn. Caesar stopped fighting. He did not try to dodge the final blow. He merely pulled his toga over his face, preferring eternal darkness to having to keep looking at the personification of falsehood. His last words were not a battle cry, but a whisper of pure emotional agony that echoes to this day. You too, Brutus. But that still wasn't the worst part. Modern psychology explains that the trauma of a broken trust destroys areas of the brain associated with survival. A fake friend destroys your ability to trust the future. Brutus delivered a blow to Caesar's groin, an attack loaded with symbolism and cruel humiliation. The man who had defeated barbarian armies fell lifeless at the foot of the statue of Pompey, his former rival. The worst was yet to come. Chaos took over Rome immediately after Caesar's last breath. The assassins ran through the streets, shouting that the tyrant was dead and freedom had returned. But the people did not celebrate. Horror gripped the population when they realized that the new leaders were the very same ones who used to eat at the deceased emperor's table. The city was plunged into a bloody civil war that lasted for years, destroying families, burning entire neighborhoods, and turning the greatest empire on earth into an ideological firing squad. No one was prepared for what happened next. Betrayal comes with a price collected with high interest by life itself. Brutus, who believed he would be hailed as the savior of the homeland, was consumed by guilt and political persecution. He was hunted to the edges of the empire and, cornered at the Battle of Philippi, realized that the mask he had worn against Caesar had become his own prison cell. With no way out, he threw himself upon his own sword. History shows us that those who build their lives on falsehood end up swallowed by the very abyss they dug for others. The historical impact of that act of fake friendship shaped the Western world, transforming a dying republic into an absolute autocratic empire. In your opinion, what was the most shocking part of this story? Looking at the past makes us realize that characters change, clothes change, weapons change, but the essence of human behavior remains untouched. The 23 stab wounds Caesar received in the Senate are no different from the professional backstabbing you get from that smiling co-worker or the cruel abandonment by that person who swore to love you until things got difficult. Learning to read the silent signs of fake allies is not a matter of paranoia. It is an essential tactic for emotional survival. The greatest tyrants in your life will never come at you from the front in shining armor. They will come from the side, offering a shoulder to cry on while choosing the exact spot where they will drive the blade of convenience. Protect your energy, pay attention to the details, and remember that the silence of an enemy is comforting compared to the forced smile of a fake friend. If you like true stories that most books never told, subscribe now. Every week, we bring forgotten stories that changed the course of humanity.